Hi, I'm Kira. I'm a multidimensional director, and over the past decade, I've worked at the forefront of immersive entertainment and XR, blending storytelling and emerging technology to create experiences that challenge the boundaries of what's possible. I've worked with many leading technology brands and directed on the world's largest volumetric stage. Now it's time to open a space for brilliant minds to share their visions for the future of experiences. Through my eyes, you'll discover unique perspectives that redefine what it means to see beyond reality. Welcome to Portal to the Next Stage. Dr. Wilson is the chair of anthropology here at California State University at Long Beach. His work has focused on minority ethnographic filmmakers, and for nearly 2 decades, he has been exploring the use of augmented and virtual reality technologies for ethnographic representation. I'm so excited to have this conversation with Dr. Wilson today. Thank you for joining me today to have this conversation.
Good to be here. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Good to be here in your space and land and department here, so thank you for having me here. One thing that I thought has been kind of interesting that correlates between the work that I do with my team in the theatrical space and the virtual reality live performance space and work that you're also doing here is this concept of the land that we're on, the space that we're in. And we share this practice of land acknowledgement. And I wonder if you could share with our audience here what land and space you and I are actually connecting in right now.
Right now, most immediately, we are in the Gerald M. Klein Innovation Space on the campus of Cal State Long Beach and Long Beach, California. But even in a larger sense, we are also on the land of the Tongva Gabrielino peoples. And we like to do a land acknowledgement whenever we have events, whenever we give speeches, whenever we introduce people, we like to acknowledge the land that we're on. And if it's okay, I can actually do that now.
I would love that if you want to read it for us and read this and share this with our audience, because I think it's interesting that we're meeting here in a live moment in live space.
The Gerald M. Klein Innovation Space is located on this sacred site of Pavungna. We acknowledge that we are on the land of the Tongva Gabrielino and the Ajachamen Waneño nations who have lived and continue to live here. We recognize the Tongva and Ajachamen nations and their spiritual connections as the first stewards and the traditional caretakers of this land. We thank them for their strength, perseverance, and resistance.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. The story of the land takes us to a deeper place, and I'm so interested in how you, in your field, have been applying these new technologies for the purpose of storytelling, for the purpose of identity, for all these different areas in ethnography as well. And I'm just curious about how you came to these new technologies. How did you first discover augmented and virtual reality and decide that they might be useful?
That's a great question. It's been kind of an evolution over time. I have to go all the way back to grad school, if that's okay.
Please, let's take us back to grad school.
My fieldwork in graduate school was in Taipei, Taiwan. It was a minority community, the Hakka people of Taipei, Taiwan. Without going into the details of the historical background there, I worked with people whose profession, they were culture workers, meaning that they were government employees who were paid to actually create ethnographies about their community. And as I did this field work, I discovered that the culture workers who were doing visual ethnographies were doing things that I had not been exposed to that much in grad school, and that I always had there had always been this seed with me that was frustrated with anthropology, that we tended to write these not so easy to access texts that are about people and about communities that they won't have access to further our careers, and they're not accessible to the general public, and they don't, and even in a further sense, I guess in a greater sense, they also don't do a good. I mean, there are some people who are brilliant writers and could write about the senses, but ethnography is a very sensual discipline. Like, we write about smells, we write about visual cues and symbols and languages and all these things. And so as I was studying these films, some of these were filmmakers, and as I studied the filmmakers, I was like, wow, this is what anthropologists should be doing. So that got me into visual anthropology after I graduated. I went and wrote my dissertation, but then I said, like, well, I wanted to pursue more visual anthropology. And so even that, I thought, two-dimensional film was a great medium for some things. But even that, I became, I kind of became accustomed, I became aware of its limitations in some ways, and I thought I didn't go deeper. And so the technology wasn't there yet for AR, VR, so these were just ideas at the time. But once Samsung came out with the first
Gear
generation,
360,
right? The Gear, like Samsung Gear was the first generation. I was like, hey, maybe we could, so I got my first VR camera. I was like, hey, what if we could actually situate these stories in space, in the places that people live, so that instead of just doing a talking head documentary interview style, which again can serve a lot of, it has its role, but what if I could see their living environment, like the things that they have in the living room or whatever space they're shooting it in? I was already thinking about immersion in some ways. And so
I want to back us up and just pull us back for 1 second to make sure that the audience understands what is ethnography. Could you give us a little bit of a definition?
Ethnography. So ethnography, anthropologists writing about communities, hopefully in collaboration with them. So it's writing about cultural life worlds. So in the old days, we would separate everything into kinship, religion, government and politics, social organization, on and on. And so we have all these sections, but in recent decades, it's become, we have more of a realization of how everything is interconnected. And so it's you're presenting someone else's life world from a subjective perspective, from a native's point of view. So I just started experimenting with augmented reality with Aurasma, which was later HP Reveal.
I remember Aurasma. Yes, I used that back in the day in a project called Cardboard City. It was a great tool and platform.
I could talk the whole hour about Aurasma.
I'm curious, now that you've been in the field for so many years and working with these technologies that come and go, they're here, they're very powerful, we're introduced to the promise of these things. How do you feel the potential of these technologies has evolved and is evolving?
I think they are evolving. I mean, the technology does change over time. As we saw with Aurasma, sometimes they just disappear when things go out of, companies can go out of business or they decide not to. Another example would be Apple ditching the cardboard icon from the iPhone.
It was a special moment to kind of understand how my camera can take me into this 360-degree environment.
Right, and it just kind of made, cardboard, we couldn't use it. We had a lot of cardboard projects in our department and things, but yeah, these technologies come and go, but I think there's more of a will especially among faculty right now, and creators, to keep them around longer, because I think I'm part of an initiative right now on campus to try to introduce VR as a teaching tool to other faculty. And so the college and the university are investing in it right now. And so as long as we have people who are interested, we can change with the technology, I think, and try to keep up with it. And if we start to create engaging content, then the technology can't leave us, right? It will be in the best interest of these companies to keep them around because people are creating in them. Like when the Apple, the Vision Pro came out. I don't know what the status of that right now, but the most exciting part of that to me was that they had a partnership with Disney. And so everyone else was focused on the tech, but I'm like, oh, this could be a good chance to make a lot of really good VR content. And it may still be coming. I know it hasn't been that long, but that was the most exciting part of it to me, is that people will be thinking and imagining in terms of the technology. And so I feel like my role in all of this is to I don't know, motivate, inspire, do whatever I can to try to help people imagine projects in these new immersive modes and things. I think as long as we have that, I think we can keep the technology around. So I haven't, there are people who have given up on VR out there, but, I think it's, we're in the early stages. This is just like when the earliest stages of filmmaking, they were just filming stage plays, and so the grammar hadn't been developed yet. But I think I think the grammar has been, people like yourself are working in this medium to, hey, let's imagine differently. So.
Right. The new worlds we can build, the new places we can take people. And I think you're right. When these new technologies get introduced, like the Apple Vision Pro, the possibility of new storytelling, I also thought what was really great about that too is the connection that you have back to the device that we're so used to carrying around, the smartphone, and those spatial photographs and spatial videos that we can start to capture, which are kind of putting that technology more readily in everyone's access. Right. In everyone's pocket. And hopefully, if we start to understand how this can plug into that old Google Cardboard headset, that concept, right, we start to connect those dots of what stories we can tell. Right.
The mobile devices, they're so, the cell phone, it's so ubiquitous now. And that was, to me, that was the worst part about losing our asthma, was that you didn't need a new piece of equipment to do it, to use, that technology. And so I know that I think the reason for moving beyond that was to get everything into glasses. I know that's the next generation of wearable tech is going to be the glasses and stuff. And then, it'll be here at some point, and we'll be designing with it. But for now, I guess we have the headsets. And I was excited about the Vision Pro, but, I thought it was, okay, well, here's a headset that people won't mind wearing. But I still don't think we're there yet with the full-time wearable devices. I guess we'll have to wait a few years for that. But, yeah, I prefer to tie immersive media to things that people already have, rather than making them buy new pieces of equipment. But it's just something that you've already got. Like, everyone has a mobile device all the time right now. I wish they had something for watches.
I'm sure it's coming. Right, all these wearables are getting new advancements and connecting us into this spatial computing technology. So I think it's really got a lot of promise. I'm curious what you think about the current state of the metaverse and the implications for anthropology.
The metaverse, I think we're right. I think we're on the verge of something, but I don't know exactly what that something is yet, because the worlds aren't quite ready yet. Because I think there are ethical issues that need to be resolved before we can fully, especially anthropology, when we're dealing with people's personal lives and the information that they're providing with this, which has always been an issue in anthropology. The ethics are a really big part of it. And in the metaverse, if everything you look at becomes content, and with AI now, content can be manipulated so easily. So I think there's a lot of legal and ethical issues that are out there. For example, I deal with, as chair of the Anthropology Department, I deal with material culture with the NAGPRA. It ensures that universities and researchers ethically deal with funerary items, human remains, and things like that. I think there's a corollary that needs to happen with digital media and immersive media, that we have to really start being careful with the digital information, whether it's filmmaking, VR, AR, all of these, because now we're collecting spatial and location. People's bodies we're digitizing whole people and whole bodies. Sure. In ethnography. And so what happens to these ones and zeros, right? They're sitting on hard drives. How do we ensure that people aren't uploading them to social media? I had this issue when I was working with students in China in a field school, where we would go out in the field and shoot things with people in the mountains. There were minority communities in the mountain. It was a partnership with a Chinese university. And a lot of the Chinese students we were finding were posting things on social media, right? We're like, hey, this is film footage. You can't just, hey, doesn't this look cool, and posting it on the Chinese, on Weibo, the Chinese version of Facebook, I guess. But yeah, so it was a thing, we worked it out. But I think in digital and immersive media, I think there's a lot to work out there. But if we can do that, I think anthropology has a lot of really amazing stories to tell in immersive ways that that other media can't do, that 2D film can't do. We can give people experiences rather than, it's not to supplant writing, it's not to supplant filmmaking. I think it's more, there are new kinds of stories that are interactive. You can do branching narratives. You can do all these different ways of telling stories that we haven't done yet, especially for a newer generation that's used to video games and things like that. So I think And for me, that's what makes all the experimentation worth it. That new media ethnography class, we've gone through so many different kinds of technologies, but to me, they're all just tools for telling stories. And so from AR to VR to we've even experimented with alternate reality games, which I think they're super immersive. But we couldn't get there was a platform we tried that didn't quite work out. But you're bringing the story into their lives through text messages and social media posts and bots they interact with.
You're kind of exploring the story in a lot of different places. And with different technologies.
And it comes to you, right, sometimes. And it's stretched out over time. It's not something you can do in one sitting. It may involve puzzles or things. I don't know. I was inspired by Cicada 3301, the internet mystery that, it's like, yeah, okay, we don't have to do exactly what they did for that. But, or I Love Bees, the Halo advertising program that became this massive. It was bigger than the game. It was an ad for the game, became bigger than the game was actually. So, and the coolest thing about it was that not only it was so collaborative that it built communities, and it's been 25 years now, and I think apparently these people are still in touch with each other. That community has remained.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
they've built relationships across
thousands of people.
Across the technology.
20,000 people, and they that had to collaborate to solve the puzzles, and they've all they've built this community across it. So if we can use the technology to build communities and help communities understand each other, it's all the better. Definitely.
I participated in something years ago with. It was led by Lance Weiler, who's at Columbia University. It was this massive. He called it. It was a MOOC, but he sort of imagined what a MOOC could be, and he made it this massive open online collaboration. It was all about collaboration. And it's true, the relationships that we built in that program, where we were working across different countries, different languages, many of those people I still collaborate with today. Some of them have worked with us at II, and others we just support each other on other projects and are able to visit the digital and virtual worlds that we're all building. So I think these new technologies do allow for that collaboration and connection across different cultures.
To me, that's the most important thing. It's about building connections between people, because we have the capability of transcending space and time to build virtual spaces. I was giving a paper I was on a panel at CES a couple of years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, and I kept getting these questions. And most of it, it was mostly a tech crowd. I was only one of two social scientists there. Most of the people were designers, they were engineers, and I kept getting this question on the panel about, hey, how could you make this totally virtual, right? And things, and I kept trying to pull it back. I'm like, we always want to keep one foot in the real world, right? So we're not, we don't want to create virtual worlds for people to live in. We just want to give you a sense of how, especially in anthropology, we want to give people a sense of alternate worlds that are real, like that are also real. So here's what it's like for you to, here's a sense for what, you can never show what it's like to be someone else, but we can give you a sense. We can give you a sense of what it's like in their world. And so for me, like anything we develop in terms of ethnography, anything we develop in VR it's not intended to, hey, this is what it's like to be an unhoused person. It's like, well, but we can give you a deeper hint, or I like to think of it as a hint.
Give you a perspective.
A perspective, yeah, that's a good way to put it. So it's not, I wouldn't be arrogant enough to say, hey, this is what it's like to be a short person. But we like to use their words. I think a lot of what I've written about it, human-centered design is a big part of it. So we like to just add another step to ethnography. So we do the ethnographic interviews, but then we take that information and feed it back into the design process, and so let them lead it, just like with written ethnographies, post-colonial ethnographies, right? So let the people who you're engaging with or collaborating with, let them lead the design process. Let them tell you what's important, what spaces are important to them, and do it there. So it's super collaborative. So there is no, there's really no director for some of these things. It's just like, hey, we co-directed it. And there's a lot of exciting stuff coming out. I haven't taught that particular section for a couple of years, so I know, but I'm seeing that there's a lot of ethnographic VR projects that are happening now, so that's very exciting.
That's exciting.
VR is perfect for that, right? Yeah.
An ability to show all these worlds, you can really take someone in and show them, like you're saying, the interconnectedness. That's quite beautiful. I also love what you were speaking about earlier about the senses, how it can connect us to all of our senses, and maybe even more that we're not even fully aware of. When I first started studying VR and looking at proprioception and this idea of embodiment, I thought was just fascinating.
Yeah, it's it's an amazing opportunity that we have to take advantage of it. About how can we incorporate more of the senses? Like I used to have an assignment, when I taught new media ethnography, I used to have an assignment like, okay, so grab a camera, go out somewhere on campus, and make a 1-minute film that describes to me what something smells like. You can use words but you can't say this is what it smells like, or to be something about, make a film about food that makes me want to eat it without begging me to eat it, so things like that. But what you can do with VR is like you can put yourself in the space with people who are engaging in the senses, and so anything that can break that 2D barrier, that's still wrapped, even in 3D, it's still kind of 2D when you look around. So I try to encourage people to break the plane a little bit, even if it goes out of focus, that's okay, or put the camera in a natural, the camera should always be in a natural human position, even if it means you can't see everything. Well, that's how life is. You can't see everything. And so to me, in ethnography, to really present something as a subjective experience, it means that some things are going to be obscured. You can't see everything. It's only once you've experienced certain things that other things come into view, right? So and a lot of that it comes from the logic of video games. Like I think of things in terms of skills being unlocked or abilities being acquired or something like that, because that's how life is. So it's really just the processual interactive parts that make it more lifelike than words on a page or a 2D film, right? That's speaking to you passively. And sometimes it is a fight for audiences, like, can't you just tell me what this is about? Just tell me what I'm saying. It's like, no, I want you I want you to feel it first.
Sure, right.
And it's a new form of storytelling. It's not even these aren't linear stories. That's the most difficult thing when I taught that class. The most difficult thing for students to grasp sometimes is that not all stories are linear, right? You might not know what the point of this is, but then, there's a saying that, a 2D film will tell you what's important and talk to you, whereas a VR film, an immersive VR subjective film, leaves you in a place where you want to talk about it afterwards. It might not tell you what, you were experiencing the things that a novelist gathers to write their story, because they create a world and then they carve a story out of it. Well, we're giving you the world to carve your own engagement.
Narrative. You get to make your own narrative connections through it. I love what you're describing here. It's in many ways reminds me actually of my colleague Caitlin Krauss has written a book called Digital Wellbeing, and she's looking at our connection between technologies and our well-being as human beings. But she's also saying so much of our lives in order to get to well-being has to do with our awareness. And when you think about, as you're immersing someone in this new narrative, this new space, it is this possibility of where do we put our attention and what are we focusing on? And are we fully aware? Because I don't even know that I'm fully aware of all my senses day to day. It's when I start to pay more mindful focus towards those things that I find that I'm now hearing things that are much further away from me, or I'm sensing other things in a sense of temperature and climate. Where do we put our attention especially as we step into an immersive media?
Right. For me, like one of the key aspects of immersive media is allowing the viewer. I don't even use the term viewer in my class. I like viewer, right? Because it's more interactive, right? It's viewer is very passive. You're not just watching things. Hopefully, you're engaging with them.
I like that. I like the word. I use the word player a lot, but I like viewer as well. It's playful. It's like a combination between using the technology and viewing the technology.
Right. It's kind of like a new subject position, right, for someone who's experiencing something. And not my term. I think I picked that up from some of the non-linear narrative literature media. It was actually about non-linear literature, but a while back. But so the viewer, for me, one of the most important aspects of the viewer is to make new connections, to make connections that they didn't see before, that maybe even the author didn't see, right? That I'm going to lay this out for you. And I have some ideas. I'm going to nudge you in one way or another, but I'm going to give you just enough freedom to explore your own connections. And sometimes they can teach even the person who made the film. And that's why it's really important to follow up and get feedback and everything. And it's because I've had that happen before where I was like, oh, I like how you did X, Y, and Z. I was like, oh, actually, I didn't do that. You discovered that, it wasn't my creation. It was just, I just put the pieces out and you put them together. So, and it requires a letting go of control over the story. And so that's hard sometimes. It's, you want to give them an experience, but you're putting things there sometimes even, and I emphasize this when I'm working with students, that sometimes you're going to put things there that most people aren't going to see. You may put something there, I really want them to see this, or I want them to look at this point, at this moment. And most of them will, but some won't. But then what do they see? But then they have their own motivations for looking elsewhere, and they may miss something. But that's okay because you don't have to have complete control over the story for them to take something away from it.
You relinquish that control, but they get to make their own narrative connections and experience for themselves in that piece.
And they're seeing something that maybe no one's ever seen before, And so that's the exciting part about it. It's like especially in VR, but also AR, or any kind of immersive media. Like people will tell you amazing. If you've done the work, people will tell you amazing things afterwards. It's like, oh wow, I never thought of it that way. They're teaching you things, and you're just exposing them to something that they might not have seen before. So that's the fun part of it. It takes a while for some viewers to get used to it because they want to be told what's happening or what does this mean. And so it's a little bit different, but I think it pays off if they really just kind of let go and have the experience. It can be really, it's great to see people really when they, I don't want to say get it because there is no it to get. Sometimes it's just like it clicks for them, I've heard someone say that sometimes there's a moment when, you turn something and it clicks. And so that moment, that click.
It's like that little feedback, right? Like you're turning a knob and it all clicks within you on many levels.
The click is in different places for different people, but when they feel it, and then they're like, oh, and they're moved sometimes, even though, okay, are they going to come away with a deep understanding and a factual history of this place? No, but what these kinds of projects can do is more motivate. Now they want to know, right? So I felt this is important. Here's a connection, but now I want to read a book about this historical moment because I want to know, I want to understand more about what I just felt.
So we were talking about relinquishing control and the creation of these different types of immersive stories. You have created this film, The Birthplace of the People, about the origin story of the Tongva people. I am interested to see and learn from you about what you learned in the creation process of that and how you were able to bring that narrative fully forward into this immersive storytelling format.
Just a hallway conversation with one of my colleagues in American Indian Studies, who is the narrator of the story. We had been talking for years about collaborating on something, and she started telling me this story. Cindy Alvitre is her name. We had been talking for years about, hey, let's do something. And I was like, hey, we're doing VR. And I had just been experimenting with tilt brush. As she was telling me the story, I thought it was like, oh, the visuals of this would be crazy. But I don't, I don't do Unity. We didn't have an artist or anyone or a developer at all. I said, hey, someone who could draw could actually draw this in tilt brush, and maybe we could find a way to immerse them in this story, because it's a really important story, and part of the community and the American Indian Studies Department, of which she was a part, really wanted more awareness about why it's significant. There's a whole decades-long history of not conflict, but negotiation, maybe is a better way to put it, between the community and the university. The university wanted to develop that space. The community wanted to preserve it. The previous generation of archaeologists, the previous generations, not the current ones, but the previous generation of archaeologists were supporting the university, and they had said that, well, there was really no community here, like they're just making this up, and so there's all this work that had to be done to prove that this community was here, and there's a history there. And so cut to the 80s and 90s, then like the community won out and the space was preserved. And so we were just having this conversation, and she wanted more people to be aware of this story. So, hey, here's why this place matters. And so the project, so I had the idea of like, okay, let's take people there to the actual space with video, and then just have them kind of submerged into this mythological realm.
And you put the camera on that sacred space, right? Like everyone gets, if they put the VR headset on, or if they go to the YouTube video in 360, they get to be there on that land.
You're in the actual space, right? You're in the actual, near the ceremonial circle. You're there, and here's the present day, and then it just goes black. It's like the sun sets, and then you enter this mythological period. And we just, Cindy knew an artist that she had collaborated with on a children's book. Actually, around the same time, they were writing a children's book with about similar stories. And so we brought the artist in on the project, and she just, I showed her, hey, here's tilt brush. She'd never heard of tilt brush. Okay, so it's tilt brush, open brush now, but she had never heard of tilt brush, hadn't used VR before. It was like, hey, here's how to use VR, here's how to use tilt brush, and I just gave her an
tilt
Oculus.
Brush, we'll just explain for the audience, is this like magical three-dimensional paintbrush that enables you to make paintings in VR, but three-dimensional paintings.
Three-dimensional that you can walk around in and fly around, and it's amazing. It's still one of my favorite VR apps. Like, it's just so immersive. But so I trained her. I just showed her how to use tilt brush and gave her an Oculus Rift for about 3 months, and she comes back with these really abstract paintings of coyotes and like hippopotami and other animals that were in the space before people were
like
here.
Birds and a dolphin. I remember,
dolphin,
I think a giant whale.
They're
and it's almost like they're flying around you, like they're like fish and dolphins jumping through the sky all the way around.
They're around, because they're not really animals. They look like they're the animals before people and animals. They Amapavetum. I still remember the word, like Amapavetum. Like they are there, and it's the story of one of the Tongva people's important gods being born there, and then also dying there. And so Coyote is pulling off a caper and ends up poisoning Wiyot, who is a person in the story. There's jealousy and intrigue and all, just like any myth, right? So Coyote is jealous and poisons Wiyot. Wiyot dies, and then all these Amapavetum animals, like animal-like creatures, come to the funeral. And the word I learned from making the film, I learned that Povungna, which is the name of the space, actually means the place of the great gathering, the gathering place, because that was the world's first funeral. So all the animals gather to mourn Wiyot, and that's tied to the actual space now. And so it's the film is being used by the university in some of their the orientation ceremonies, so that because students who live, the dorms are right near Povungna, and students need to be oriented to this space, because this is not a place for you to go out and drink. This is not, it looks like wilderness right on campus, but it's not wilderness. This is a sacred place. There are ribbons there. There are sacred poles there that that commemorate people's ancestors and recent ancestors, but then also parents and grandparents that have died. So we're trying to, with the project, our intention was to bring together the mythological layer with the actual physical layer and give you a way to experience both at the same time. And hopefully you can take that into real life and oh, okay, so it's really, and in a way, it's a transformative ritual, really. It's and that's what ritual does. It takes the mundane and turns it into something special or to something different, right? And so viewers should come out of the film with the understanding and the embodied knowledge that this location on campus, which does stand out. It looks, it's like, wow, why didn't they do anything with this corner of campus? Or the university wanted to build a strip mall there, and I'm sure a lot of people would say well, it'd be nice to have a 7-Eleven here or something like that, but why is this part undeveloped? And actually the film does more. So it not only shows the spiritual elements of it, but it also, the VR film is expansive, and it gives you a sense because when just a little piece of the narrative, when Wyatt gets poisoned before he dies, they take him, the Amapavetum take him to different different natural springs that used to be here before all the development of Long Beach, right? And so you get the sense, and actually Cindy and I have discussed expanding this to some kind of AR powered tour, because you don't see, there are things that aren't here anymore, and so you see in the film that this used to be a marshland, right? That's why the people gather here, it's where the water is, and so they take him to all these hot springs to try to cure him. And so you get the sense oh wait, this is not just one little patch. This used to be part of something bigger, something that doesn't exist anymore, and that the city, the university has destroyed, but it's still, mythologically it's still there. But
the myth is still there, right? The meaning is still there. We just don't know. We just don't know it. And we need a way to find it.
Right.
And that's where a tool like augmented reality could take human beings closer to that, sort of see through the veil of time back to what that mythology was, and still feel the significance just as alive as it always was.
Right.
I think it's so powerful. I think a lot about rituals, and again, my colleague Caitlin Krause writes about how deeply we're missing rituals in society today. And it's part of the reason that my team and I started to make Finding Pandora, because we felt that there needs to be ways for us to come back to look at what the gods were telling us years ago through these mythologies and these narratives, what these stories and parables were for us as human beings. And then I think this importance of the social connection between these things. How do we apply these things across time and space?
Life is complicated, right? And it helps if we have stories that we have stories of trying to breaking it into meaningful pieces for us. And as an anthropologist, that's one of my favorite topics in anthropology is ritual. And I do see it that we don't have it. We have little minor ones, we have little small things, but it's hard, I think, with so many people in so many countries around the world, and even within countries, it's hard to have rituals that mean anything to a large number, to so many people. And if we can use some of these technologies to bring people back to this sense of there are things that are bigger than what you're thinking about right now, I think it could help with the climate crisis. I think bringing a deeper,
an understanding of Gaia, take us back to the origin of the land, the planet that we're living on in the solar system.
Yeah, everything. It's working with people in the local Native American communities right now, and I know they teach this in American Indian studies, but the sense of how have we lost the sense that this thing that gives us life is sacred. It's, and that doesn't even have to be a religious principle. That's just what's more valuable than life. And you can't, that's why when people say save the earth, I'm like, well, the earth's not going anywhere. The earth is going to be here with or without us. It would be better if it was with us, from our perspective.
What is our connection to it, and how do we participate in that?
Right. The earth is indifferent to us, but it's doing a lot for us. So, it's, the climate, I think having an embodied experience with pieces of the earth could do, or society or people, not just climate change. I think with some of the political discord, we lose the sense of, I teach in my identities class. I go through this whole thing with identity and narrative, and you have to have stories, and there's so many different stories out there, from social media to movies to comics to whatever people are plugged into, that there's so many things that it's really difficult to form a kind of coherent sense of identity. And so if we can use technology and platforms and things like that to create more collective understandings and connections between people, then we can kind of cut through some of the noise. And for me, all of it, there's a lot of debates on campus, for example, about AI. I don't think AI is something. I think there are very fearful things about AI, but I think it's also a tool that let's see how can we let it uplift our humanity, right? The robots will be used in the way that we want to use them, at least for now. Right. Let's find ways to develop our own humanity with these technologies. Not, calculators didn't ruin math; it just allowed us to do other things, right? I think we have to learn how to live with it, and so that's my approach with VR. Even it's, hey, we have these great other ways of telling stories. Okay, let's add a new one. What are the new forms of stories?
It's a tool. Yes.
It's just a tool, yeah.
I look at that a lot as just, a knife can be used to butter toast, or it could be used to kill someone. I think about, what was something, if we go back in time, what was something before it was a harpoon? Maybe it was just a long pole before it had the right pieces attached to it to make it something that could kill. So the same, I think, with AI and all these new virtual reality headsets, we can use them in beautiful ways, or we can use them to destroy each other. It's really about the purpose.
In the end, it's the people, right? It's the people that matter, and human intentionality is where is going to determine the direction of a lot of these technologies. And as I said, with ethnography and ethnography and the metaverse and VR, we have a lot of work to do in terms of ethics and law, especially with AI coming into the picture now. It's a double-edged sword that can be doing amazing things, but then it can also do destructive things. But I tend not to dwell on that in a negative way, but it is something that has to be part of how it develops and evolves over time. I think ethics has to be a really big part of it to keep it humane. And when people ask me, why are you doing VR? Why are you interested in VR as an anthropologist? I'm like, well, anthropologists have always been at the forefront of representing other worlds, right? We used to do it with words, and then it was film, audio, and then film. Well, okay, now it's immersive media, and so we should be at the forefront of thinking about ethics, there's documentary making, and then there's ethnographic documentary making. Like, we don't plant stories and cause conflict. And, some films in ethnography don't have to have conflict, right? They don't, hey, who's my protagonist here? It's, so we've always been, with visual anthropology, we've always been concerned with ethics more than Hollywood or mainstream film. So I think with VR, it should be the same thing. Like, well, okay, so how can we do this ethically in a way that's beneficial to communities that are giving us all this freely giving us all this information and details about their lives? And so how can we do it in a way that benefits them and not just our careers, which is a very crass way to put it, but it's true.
Thinking about people coming into this field, students that are interested in getting into virtual reality, academics and researchers, what would your advice be for those getting started in XR and emerging technologies?
The best advice I can give them is try things, push the boundaries of what you know how to do. And a lot of times it's not about finishing, it's about what did you learn. It's about what did you learn in the process. And also another piece of advice, which someone said this to me recently, actually, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. It doesn't have to be perfect. Sometimes you just got to let go and move on to the next thing. The more important one of those two is not being afraid to fail, because that's when you really learn. Like, if you never failed, how much are you actually learning? That means you're just not, you're not pushing far enough. Find out what the boundaries are and either break through them or look elsewhere. If you run into a door, turn sideways, there's probably another opening somewhere. And so that's what I liked about teaching that class, is that we have the space to, we just built a new lab, for example, and the university asked me, what do you want to call this? It was going to be the Anthropology Visual Lab. I was like, let's call it the collaboratory space, because that's how I want to encourage that idea that it's just a place to collaborate and invent. And when you see new platforms, if you have a chance to try them, just try them out. See what they are. They might not. You don't have to make them work if they don't. If they don't work, then try something else. Mm-hmm. There's always more things. Talk to as many people as you can, because there's so many brilliant people out there that are thinking in a way that's similar to you, but maybe from a different angle. And so that's always useful. Since I've been working as much as I could in the VR space, I've learned more from other people than I've taught anybody. So it's I feel like I was like, it's kind of a fraud for me to say I'm teaching this class, because I actually learned from students,
We're always learning from each other, definitely.
Always
I think as human beings, but especially when you're in an academic field and space, there's so many wonderful people around you, so many resources to tap into.
It is, and learn from. Build those human connections. And I don't even think I'm particularly good at that, but I know that I recognize the value in it.
That's okay. We can all get better, right? I think that's what we're here for in life, is just to keep finding ways to learn from each other and introduce each other to new ideas and perspectives and technologies. So for a last question, to summarize the now and the beyond, what are your hopes for the future of VR and anthropology?
VR and anthropology, I hope it just becomes a mainstream platform that people can think in, and that they can propose projects in, and that people are taking VR cameras around the world and doing ethnographic, immersive, interactive experiences that just 20 years from now is the new version of ethnographic film. So I just hope it just becomes institutionally normalized in a way, and I think we're getting there. I think we're making progress.
Definitely. This is what I call the lightning round. Okay, are you ready? Sky or terrain?
Sky.
Earth, water, wind, fire.
Water.
Force, time, shadow, light.
Light?
AR, VR, MR.
MR.
If you could invite one person from history to put on a VR headset, who would it be?
I would love for Martin Luther King to see the future in some ways in a VR headset. I think that would be kind of cool.
That would be amazing.
And also Isaac Newton. I don't know, just to see his impact on a lot of things. I don't know. Now I'm going to be thinking about that all day.
Good. You can take that into the future. We're going to go back in time again. If you could retake a school subject again over in VR, what would it be?
A school subject that I could take over in VR would be chemistry. I think just seeing, I think I would understand it more if it was more immersive in 3D.
Definitely. What would you say to your younger self?
Follow your mom's advice to just do the things that you love to do, and everything else will fall into place.
If you could have one superpower, what would it be?
It would be flight. I don't even know why. That just would be cool.
Have you experienced that before in VR?
I did this weekend in a flight simulator game. It made me nauseous.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah. It doesn't sound like it was magical.
No.
Okay, very last question. If aliens were arriving tomorrow and you have been the representative on Earth and chosen to deliver the message, what would you say?
That humans aren't perfect, but, we're pretty cool. And so, you might not like all of us, but I guarantee you'll like some of us. So get to know us.
Excellent. Well, it's been great getting to know you. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson, for being here today to take us through your journey and all the great research and work you've been doing with these technologies.
Oh, thank you. This was fun.
Thank you for entering the portal with me. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the next stage of storytelling, like and subscribe so that you can catch all of our episodes. Ready for more? Jump through the portal into the next episode. And if you've got a vision for your own immersive production, partner with Double I Studios and bring the future of storytelling to life today. May you stay curious, open, and embrace the future. I'll see you at the next act.